Hey guys, Tony Rowe back with another Leech Has Rapid game against Viktor1959. So let's go G3 this game. Hopefully we can get a King's Indian. I'm not in the mood for D5 here. Oh, that's even worse. Okay, I'm gonna play something. Do I want to play that way? Okay, I'll play C4, I guess. C4 is the most natural move. Oh, and he goes D6, so a surprising treat. Okay, so now can I go B3? Okay, I'm going B3 regardless of whether or not I can go B3. What day is today? Ever since I quit my job, I just simply don't know what day it is. What? I'm trying to look here. It's Thursday, the 26th. A5. Okay. I think he's just using some kind of really weird move order to get to like normal Fianchetto King's Indian positions. Like it would be usual for him to go knight B to D7, E4, E5. Yeah, I don't see any reason to not go E4. He's probably going E5, I'm guessing. Okay. This is just going to be one of those games where I simply cannot guess any of my opponent's moves, I think. I'm just going to challenge the bishop right away. I'm happy to have him play bishop f3, and he'll go e5. I'll probably play bishop e3, and no. Okay, yeah. Why would he now play the move I think he's going to play? This bishop looks, well, I guess he's going knight a6. Okay. This is all fine and dandy. Maybe a3. Maybe rook c1. Queen d2 would be a very natural move. Rook e1 even. A lot of options. Is e5 possible? I mean, eventually you get to the point where he hasn't played e5 for so many moves that maybe I should consider playing it myself. I guess he's going to go knight e8 if I do that. And maybe that's not super exciting. The problem is I don't know where these guys really want to be yet. Like, I could conceivably play queen c2 or queen d2 would be the normal squares, and I could have all kinds of arrangements of rooks. Rook c1, rook b1, this rook goes to c1, rook c1, rook d1, rook a to d1, rook f to e1. I just simply don't know. I'm a little bit leery of putting my queen on c2 just because right now it offers him knight b2 for knight b4 for free, and then I just have to go queen d2. So probably this move I can eliminate. Okay, I'm going to play kind of a weird move. I'm going to play rook e1. And my reasoning is that, yeah, his only real plan is e5 and e takes d4, and usually the rook is very happy to guard the e4 pawn along the open e file in that case. And I also thought that I'm a little bit more certain of this rook's location than this rook. This rook could conceivably go to really any three of these squares, but for the most part, I'm happy with a rook on e1 no matter what in that case. So I guess I'm just going to go queen d2. And I'll pre-move knight takes d4. Something tells me he's not going to play that move, though. Of course, now that I said that, he's going to play it immediately. No, okay, he wants to go f5, he's telling me. All right, well, If he goes f5, I'm going to take e5. And he's got a hanging bishop. I'm going to go ahead and say he's just going to play rook a to d8. Yeah. That would be a very natural way to go. One interesting idea now, though, is d takes e5, d takes e5, and then knight a4. I guess he maybe has bishop h3 in that case, because my queen, I've conveniently lined it up with his rook. So maybe I go knight a4 first. I kind of like the look of knight a4. It's kind of a weird idea, but it's not that common of an idea. Another kind of idea I'm looking at in a lot of these positions is c5, because d takes c5, d takes c5 leaves this knight trapped on a6, and it also kind of cements this weak b6 square and this weak a4 pawn. It doesn't work right away because, again, so if c5, first of all, anytime you play the c5 idea, you have to look at him flicking in e takes d4 first. But in this case, he could also play d takes c5, d takes c5, probably bishop h3, and I'm not super happy. So, so knight a4, huh? Knight a4, f5 though, and e4 is loose. Do I care? So if I play d takes e5, he plays f takes e4. I guess I can play e takes d6 in that case, and maybe knight g5, and I'm doing all right. Actually, I'm probably killing him there, so. Knight a4, is c5 a move? D takes c5. I guess he has to play d takes c5. Can go back to c3, but then he has bishop here. Knight d5, rook d5. Yeah, it's kind of sharp. I need to be able to. I need a cohesive plan to meet f5, which I feel like this is kind of a critical moment. That's why I'm taking so long, just because I know that he's going to play this f5 move, and I need some kind of sensible way to meet it. And I kind of feel like, I don't know, like usually in these positions, f5 is a little bit of an artificial plan. I've analyzed similar positions to this, and I'm always surprised to find that f5 is usually not the way black should be playing in these positions. So I'm taking a second and I'm trying to find out if there's any specific reason in this position why maybe it's not that good. It's never easy, though. I mean, there's g4, but I'm guessing g4 is possible, and he can go in for a pawn sack if he wants with knight f4. It doesn't seem all that convincing. One thing to note is that f5, e takes f5, e takes f5, bishop g... Nah, that doesn't work. f5, d takes e5, d takes e5, bishop g5. He has to go back with knight f6, I guess, because this thing's hanging. I'm not sure. Another idea is just to go de, de, and queen d6, and just trade off the queens and try and capitalize on these weak pawns in kind of his loose queenside in a queenless middle game. I don't hate that idea. So the only reason this idea is compelling, I think, is because in a lot of lines, I think I'll be able to take over the d file with bishop b6 and attack this weak pawn on the queen side. Probably you guys found this idea like 9 minutes ago and have been screaming. I just want to make sure there's nothing better. I stopped looking at knight a4 because I think c5 is a reasonable rejoinder. Or ed first, and then, so like if here, then takes here, maybe c5 or something like that is kind of annoying. Okay, well, let's do this. I think I'm happy to go in for this kind of endgame grind. I think the critical line is queen takes d6, rook takes d6, bishop e6. But I don't think I should have. I still think white should have some kind of an edge there. Just probably rook f to d1 is good enough. So queen d6, rook d6, bishop e6, rook f to d1, and takes, and bishop b6 is coming up. And we'll have this showdown between the two worst bishops in the world. So he doesn't want any of that. I thought against basically everything. I was just going here. What's his idea? Bishop e3, taking here? That seems terrible. Bishop d8, he's just losing everything. I don't get it. After this, is he not just losing an exchange? I'm just going to play it. Maybe I can be really cruel and take on a5 first and just leave this exchange because he can't play rook e to d8 because d7 hangs. So maybe I can take here first and just be extremely mean. So I feel like at this point the game is sort of more in conversion mode than anything else. So yeah, I mean, what does he do? f5 still? Black should probably realize that he's sort of facing catastrophic levels of material loss here. Bishop a5, bishop d8. I mean, knight e5 might be possible sometime down the line. He maybe has to just go for some kind of a mess instead of, the long suffering. At some point, in a lot of chess games, you have to realize that you're losing. and that if you don't do anything, if you just try to sit there and like suffer it out down the material, that you're just going to lose, and you have to just kind of at some point just make a mess of it and go for it. Yeah, the c6, a5 constellation of pawns does have this problem that you're a little weak to this, knight a4, knight c5, or this bishop on e3 tends to be a strong piece. Usually it's not as bad in the King's Indian because it's a little bit more usual for black to leave this bishop at home on d7 and put the knight on d7. The bishop at home on c8, rather, and put the knight on d7. And after e5, e takes d5, knight takes d4, e takes d4, knight takes d4, he goes knight c5 instead. So, but in this case, he doesn't have that, so I think he has some problems. So we'll see. Victor's now in a deep think. Those of you who follow my channel will be well familiar with the theme of players playing quickly and getting into trouble, and only then sort of going into longer things. But yeah, I mean, for instance, he played queen c8 like, pretty much instantly, and it's just a big mistake. I think the only option was to take on d6, but maybe he has to play something like bishop f6 and just defend the rook. At least after bishop a6, bishop a5, he can play bishop takes h3, because then bishop takes d8, rook takes d8 hits the queen. Knight b8. That's not the move you want to play. Okay, can I take on a5 in this case? He wants to move the rook. I get it now. Idiot. What if I go bishop c7? No, that doesn't do anything. What if I go bishop a5, rook e to d8, bishop c7? Threatening bishop b8, queen takes d7. Okay, I think that's a little much. I'm just going to take this thing. I don't trust that line. This move does not help his position really at all. I mean, okay, it defends his knight on d7, but that's pretty much it. So after... maybe he'll take with the queen, I don't know. How do I improve my position after he recaptures? Maybe knight a4 to b6 or knight a4 to c5 still. Continue to punish these weaknesses. Maybe I can take on e5 as well. So if knight e5, does he have anything? Is knight a4 just better? Knight a4 threatens to trap the queen. He's almost forced to go knight back to a6. Then knight b6. Queen b8 is forced. Queen takes b8. If rook takes b8, he just hangs the bishop. But if knight b8, then, well, he hangs the bishop anyway because of this knight on b6. So knight a4. Knight a4, knight a4. I think I'm going to do that. I don't have a lot of time. I'm just going to play knight a4. Maybe bishop f6, knight b6. Yeah, none of this works. Bishop h3. Knight c8, rook d6 is forced, and then knight takes d6, and I'm just up a boatload of material. Knight a4 is almost curtains. It's unusually... just kind of an odd game. He does have that, doesn't he? Yeah, and if knight b6, then bishop d8, knight c8, bishop c8 protects the bishop. I can't take on e5, though. Is my queen getting trapped? I don't think so. Okay, so let's just take that. Bag some more material. a5 is also hanging. Probably just knight b6 anyway is good just to... I mean, at this point, I think just taking off... Okay, I'm still threatening to trap his queen, but assuming that he kind of meets the queen trap threat with like knight a6 or something, I think just taking taking a bunch of material is good enough. Knight a6, I can also just play queen takes a5 and keep this pin on the light squared bishop for a little bit longer. Okay. Yeah, let's just take this. Just mopping up here. On knight a6, he is threatening bishop b4. It's worth noting. Knight b6, queen e6. Knight b6, queen g4, I guess. Maybe knight e5 even? I don't know. In all of these lines, after queen g4, I can just go queen g5 and I think take off all of the stuff. Yeah, let's just do that, I think. I don't see a reason to think for a really long time about these decisions. It's more important for me to just not run out of time. I'm up in exchange and a pawn, and he still has this bad knight on b8, and this knight on h5 is no peach either. So the only question is if knight e5 is stronger. Knight e5, queen e6, I suppose. I'm just gonna do this. This is kind of lazy, but yeah, this looks all right. He can maybe contemplate queen e6. Okay, he doesn't want to. Saving the bishop doesn't make a lot of sense. Bishop g4, I'll go f3. I can even go bishop f3. F3, there's bishop c5 check. So I don't want to do that. Let's just go bishop f3. Try and chop this off. If he goes bishop takes f3, knight takes f3, bishop c5, I'll go knight d7. This line, hitting the bishop and hitting the knight, he'd probably take, but then I get a rook on the 7th, hitting b7 pawn. Note again that this is a 15-5 game this time, so the extra little bit of increment actually helps a lot. Especially for a guy like me. Always in time trouble. Oh, he's got tricks. Touché. Yeah, I didn't see that move. So what do I do about that? Knight d7, knight takes d7, rook takes d7. Knight e4, or rook e4. Rook b7. Yeah, I mean, all of this seems still quite good. So now I'm threatening to take, of course, because bishop c5. I guess I can take here. He can take on d7 first. So it's kind of a pseudo threat. But I guess I'm threatening to take on f8. So if he wants to keep the threat alive and not take on d7, he has to play something like bishop e7. But I don't think he's going to do that. Okay, if he takes, Okay, he doesn't want to do that. That's fair. I could take b8, rook b8, rook d7. Kind of want to play e5 though. Yeah, I'm going to do that. My idea is that I want to go knight g5 to e4. This knight in this position, I just don't... I don't love the available squares I have. Okay, maybe a slight change of plans. I'm going to go rook e4 to stop knight f4. Now he can't go knight g7 because of knight f6 check. He can't take on d7 first and then go knight g7, but b7 is hanging, so... Whoa, he's... Okay, alright, that's fine, that's fine. f5, I think, in general, is not a move I'd be super excited to play as black, but that's just me. Now this thing is passed, and this square is extra weak. Now it's just very tempting for me to go knight b8 if he doesn't do anything about it. Because rook b8, rook d7, now his 7th rank is completely open. Knight g5 is a threat. Even just, you know, getting this thing going is going to be pretty bad. He's doing a good job of being annoying, though. And when you have 58 seconds, you don't really want your opponent to be annoying. So what does he do? Maybe knight f4. Maybe try and go back to e6 to blockade this pawn. That's a reasonable idea. Ah, okay. Well, I'm going to do this and just simplify, get my rook in. Knight h4 now is maybe quite annoying, hitting g6. It's not easy to protect. It's a pretty real threat for me to just go e6, e7, rook d8 check. If he goes bishop c5, I'll probably go... Okay, so he goes knight f4. I'll go e6. If he goes rook e8, I take on b7 and I hit the bishop. I guess in that case he has bishop c5, though. e6 is hanging. Rook e5 or rook d... Well, okay, rook d3 would be very bad. This is becoming an alarming threat, it seems. At least to me. What does he do about that move? If this king f7, e8 queen is a discovered check, and maybe rook e8, I guess, is his plan. B6 perhaps. I need to get this knight involved. It's not really doing anything right now. Maybe king h2 to g3 to kick this knight first. The point is that g5, rook f5, so he has to move the knight. I guess he can play knight h5 check. Yeah. This thing's annoying, and this thing is not very good at the moment. So what do I do about that? Maybe just trade off this thing for this thing. Whoops, losing my mind with the, with the highlights. So if he plays knight h3 check, king g2, both of these things are hanging. Whoops. I'm going to go e7, rook e8, rook takes b7. Just ask him where he's putting his bishop. Rapidly running out of squares. Really? He just wants to go into this piece down ending? Alright. That's cool with me. I don't know if he... Did I miss something or what? I don't know if he saw that this is... What's the quickest? Probably this. I like my chances. This is kind of humorous, but I somehow don't think it's as good as a piece in these guys. Yeah, all right. Problem is it's not that easy for him to push these. Whereas, for me, a little bit easier. Do I care? Yeah, all right, we'll move the knight. Just to be safe. Still can't take here because of knight f5 check. Now rook b8, rook a7, e8 equals queen is a threat. Yeah, let's just make a queen. This is stupid. I'm thinking about, like, should I move the knight, but okay, it's a queen. Yeah, okay, we get the resignation, so. I would take a rematch, except I'm recording, Victor. I'm sorry. Alright, so let's do this real quick. Add a chapter. That's not what I wanted to do. Let's add a chapter. All right. Okay, so let's take a look at this. This is an odd move order. Let's see how many. Let's see like what percentage of games are. Yeah, 9,000 games or almost 10,000 games feature D6 and D5, and 360 feature C6. It's not a bad move. It's gonna just transpose to something else basically, pretty much all the time. So, if white goes C4, the most natural move would be to go D5 and go into this sort of Grunfeld Slav hybrid. This is a very popular system against the Grunfeld nowadays. Is just extremely solid. It's not easy to really make anything of this for white. You can see here that the main move is C takes D5, but after C takes D5, C takes D5, the position's completely symmetrical, and it's not it's white to move, but it's not that easy to make use of the one move that you have. And you can see 64% of the games are drawn after knight C3. So I think for the most part this position is both not one that I want to play and also not really that theoretically challenging for black. I was going to go knight b to d2 here. This is a position I would reach more commonly after d5 and then knight b to d2, which I think is kind of interesting. Kramnik's played it. Karyakin, I think, has played it. Jorgmeyer plays it. And then if c6, then I would go c4. So planning b3, bishop b2, etc. But c6, c4, d6 is just a King's Indian. And, of course, knight c3 is the most popular move. I like to go b3. But, again, this is sort of similar to c6 in that I think b3 is very likely to transpose to mainline King's Indian Fianchetto setups anyway. So, okay, but he goes a5, which is kind of wacky. I don't think it's bad. I mean, for instance, more common would be something like knight b to d7 and knight c3, e5, e4, when black is usually going to play like rook e8, h3, e takes d4, knight takes d4, and then either knight c5 first or a5. So knight c5, rook e1, a5. When a5 is in anyway, and it's useful to stop b4 and perhaps work up some counterplay with a4, if possible, in the future. So a5 in and of itself, I don't think is a bad move. It's kind of just an unusual move order. I played knight c3 here. The thing about the Fianchetto King's Indian is you might play b3, but not necessarily play bishop b2, which seems kind of weird. But b3 is just a good move in general to ensure that if black plays a4, you can play b4 without him being able to capture en passant. So if I were to play, down the road knight c3 and not b3, and the pawn gets to a4, and I want to kick this knight away from c5 with b4, he can capture en passant. But when you play b3, it doesn't happen. So another thing is when you play b3, c4 isn't loose anymore. So if he, for instance, ends up going, I don't know, like knight b to d7, e4, e5, let's say h3, e takes d4. Now knight e5 doesn't really do anything. Not that it's ever really a move, but yeah, it just shores up the c4 pawn. So okay, I'm getting tricked into all these variations here. Which one? Yeah, I didn't want this one. Okay, so but we end up, yeah, I'm not sure about this. I think bishop g4, if you're not going to take on f3, is kind of an inaccuracy, because I'm more than happy to have h3 for free. We saw in a bunch of variations earlier that h3 is a thematic move anyway. I want to put my bishop on e3, but I don't want to allow knight g4. So for me, h3 is a useful inclusion anyway. And so after h3, I think you pretty much are honor bound to take, and go either knight b to d7 or e5. I think white's better. I mean, white has a little bit more space and the two bishops for free, but black is still relatively solid and, can play this position. Probably, close to being a large advantage for white, but it's still playable. After bishop d7, I'm not as certain. Yeah, and I did wonder about e5 here. I was just not sure about knight e8. I guess I can just try and keep it. What if he just goes knight a6? Bishop f4. Yeah, it does start to look uncomfortable. It's true. I'm a little bit leery of going to these positions where this e5 pawn is here, because if at any moment I have to kind of exchange this, black sort of equalizes relatively easily. But if I can keep this thing, black's position is going to be really uncomfortable. So yeah, here it seems like I can overprotect e5 and achieve a pretty huge advantage, which is unfortunate. I did look at it. I mean, it's good that I looked at it, but I sort of lazily played bishop e3. I don't think bishop e3 is bad. It's just probably not as good as e5 if e5 is a playable move. Yeah, and again, e5 would have been probably similarly good. I guess in this case I lose a tempo on bishop f4, though. Yeah, even so, this looks really very nice. Yeah. So good to know and missed opportunity. Yeah, and he goes e5 and then I lose the chance. I don't think this position. Yeah, I mean that's the problem with the Fianchetto King's Indian a little bit, is that, you know, white has a wide variety of setups that are just generally kind of good, and black needs to be precise. And I think already with the bishop on d7, the knight on h5, and this knight on a6, it doesn't feel to me like black has played the opening all that great. And there are these kind of weak squares that after queen d6 I think is it's hard to deal with as black. I think probably he had to play this way, and I was just planning on playing rook after d1. Probably rook e8 and then bishop f8 is the best way to try and defend. But after bishop b6, I think black is clearly worse. I guess he can go bishop b4 though, can he? So if here takes bishop b4 perhaps, and it's not super clear that I have a ton. Yeah, that's kind of annoying actually. I wonder if there's anything better. Really. So I can win a pawn, right? With this and this, and takes. And he can't defend it? Okay, so that's probably the way. Whoops. So just winning a pawn with... I didn't want to do that. Just winning a pawn this way seems good. Okay, so that's good to know. But queen c8, after queen c8, I think he's honestly just losing. He's losing in exchange, and I don't really have to give up any of the positional trumps that I had anyway, so something like this seems extremely bad. Yeah, and just taking. Chopping everything off. I don't have to do this, but I think it's just pretty clearly winning for white. This is cute. It's kind of an interesting way to at least try and spice up the game a little bit, but yeah, I mean, okay, I'm still up in exchange and a pawn, so... Or just an exchange, rather, sorry. But it's not easy for... Rook e4 is not good? Why is that? Knight d7, knight d7... knight f6. You tricky, tricky dog. Takes, rook d8, bishop f8. So you have to take on b7 instead. And now I'm just up a pawn, which is... So rook e4 was not good, for a very cute tactical reason that I did not see. Oh, that's adorable. But also irritating. Yeah, good to know. Kind of a mess. But we're back after this, and I think, yeah, it's just... The only major issue I have is that this knight is really kind of annoying, and this knight is really not very good. So the only sort of thing I think that I really need to solve is fixing it. But somehow, I think bishop c5 is kind of bad. It just essentially loses a move. My rook is not really that much worse on e5 than on e3, and now it's just my turn with his bishop on b6 instead of on b4, which... Yeah, and in fact, yeah, he just ends up losing a bunch more moves, and he throws himself on the sword here. I don't know if he thought that this rook was undefended, or he thought that the e-pawn was hanging at the end and maybe he could suffer down a piece, but with these 3 pawns, but yeah, I mean, this position is not particularly worth talking about. So, okay, that's, I would say mostly it. I wouldn't call this move the best move. Yeah, but Fianchetto King's Indian is tricky. I mean, I think if you play the King's Indian, it's one of the lines you really need to study diligently, because this haphazard play, letting white achieve some setup like this with any sort of non-optimal arrangement of pieces, if black doesn't get his pieces on the best squares and get active and press white, you know, this space advantage and black's lack of counterplay and, you know, weaknesses like, you know, this b6 square, this a5 pawn, they start to add up, and it doesn't seem like a lot here, but you can see how quickly it becomes losing, right? And it's just because white has, you know, this positional bind and all of these little trumps that add up to something much greater if black isn't really active. Black has to really fight and you know, make something of his position before it gets to a point like this, I think. Usually that's with e takes d4, but, you know, e takes d4 also comes with positional risk. You know, e takes d4, knight takes d4, rook e8, etc., rook a to d1. You know, black can play knight c5 and start pressuring the e-pawn. But in general, this structure is extremely favorable for white on a positional level, right? This d-pawn is backward. White has more space, etc. So here, black has to use the, you know, knight coming to c5 and getting active, a4 push. This opened up bishop on g7, etc. to get active before he gets, you know, squeezed to death. But in this game, that wasn't the case, and I just got to sort of grind him down, and the wheels came off pretty quickly. But okay, well, I hope you guys liked it. I will catch you soon with more rapid games and opening content. Bye.